So we're getting K-pop Demon Hunters in November. The Criterion Collection announced the films that they'll be releasing in October of this year. And another film that was expected to be released by Criterion this fall was apparently announced at least a year after this film was released, and also one of my favorite films of last year, as well alongside a few other films kind of related with Halloween. And we also have a Stanley Kubrick box that was previously announced that is probably going to be as exciting as the Wes Anderson box set from last year. So here, let's find out what films the Criterion Collection will be releasing in October. So now on the Criterion Collection's website, and for this month, we have, you could say pretty much, a lot of Halloween films in a sense. Of course, a few titles apparently for October with, we might have like, 4 new titles plus one 4K re-release, as well as the previously announced Stanley Kubrick box, which we'll get into detail probably near the end. And we also have another Eclipse box, which apparently is also a re-release, in a sense, with the first films of Samuel Fuller. And, it's kind of with the theme of this month, where apparently they all probably made a few horror films in his career, in a sense. So apparently, like, the first title we're probably going to go through probably you could say, one of many big titles in this Halloween season for the Criterion Collection, where we have, like, Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein, which I'd probably say this is probably, like, one of my favorite films of last year, and I also had the honor of kind of seeing it in the theaters in 35mm film, and, though it's possible that the film might have actually been filmed on digital, and also filmed in Toronto, which is a kind of place that Guillermo Del Toro kind of likes a lot and kind of talks about a lot. But and yeah, the film is kind of relevant today because I know it kind of stays more true to the original book that the story was based on. That, of course, this could probably be like the definitive version of the story, and there's apparently like a lot of great performances in it, including like Jacob Elordi playing the creature in the film, and Oscar Isaacs playing Victor Frankenstein, who could probably say is the actual monster in the film, and you also got like Mia Goth playing one of Victor's love interests, and Christoph Waltz also playing, you could say, Victor's mentor in the sense in the film. But you probably knew apparently like most of Guillermo del Toro's films are apparently in the collection, and so apparently this is I'm not surprised that apparently that his version of Frankenstein apparently it will be released by the Criterion Collection, and though this is also a Netflix film, which of course a lot of their films are apparently being available on by the Criterion Collection. But and yeah, as we can kind of see with the cover of this edition of the film, apparently it kind of describes the film where you kind of have like Victor kind of like holding the creature hostage, even though he was kind of like compassionate with the creature apparently like for like a bit, and then somehow he kind of didn't take care of him very well, because if they probably got along more, then probably things would probably been different, probably at least for them at least. But and of course you have like the creature apparently like apparently also kind of being chained, which events that happened in the film happened. But so of course it got 3 Academy Awards, mainly for at least for the artistic categories, including like Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, and Best Production Design, where in the case of makeup, apparently to kind of create like, well, the creature in the film, of course, apparently Jacob Elordi had to like sit in a chair for like at least a day, apparently, so to kind of make him look what he is. With some also looks very realistic too, in a sense. Of course, for anyone who doesn't know about Frankenstein, well, here's what his version of the film talks about. Guillermo del Toro's spellbinding take on one of the most enduring of all modern myths. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein imposes the classic tale with new depths of humanity while pushing it towards dazzling heights of gothic grandeur, which of course, with Guillermo del Toro's films, it's a point that he could actually it can get a bit religious at times because maybe some Roman Catholic factors kind of in this film. I mean, especially with his version of Pinocchio, in a sense. Shifting between the perspectives of the brilliant but callous Victor Frankenstein and the creature, he fashions from flesh and then cruelty mistreats. Del Toro reframes the legend as a story of fathers and sons struggling to break free from cycles of trauma. A decade in the making, triumph of darkly revenging visual invention and operatic storytelling, Frankenstein is a deeply personal statement for the director who has long drawn to the realm where men and monsters merge. So let's find out what are the special features of the Criterion edition of Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein, which obviously is a director-approved 4K UHD and Blu-ray special edition. It has a 4K digital master of the theatrical version of the film with Dolby Atmos soundtrack, plus a new version of the film, the Reborn cut, which is an extended director's cut of the film with Dolby Atmos soundtrack, with a running time of about 2 hours and 38 minutes. So actually, like, for sure I'm probably going to get this edition, and since this is being released in October, there's a probable chance it might be in the flash sale during that time. So it has 2 4K UHD discs with the films, both presented in Dolby Vision HDR, as well as 2 Blu-rays with the films and special features, a new audio commentary on the Reborn cut with the person that made the film, Guillermo Del Toro, a documentary on the making of the film, probably especially on the Reborn cut, called The Anatomy Lesson, which I think this might be the making of that is available on Netflix, but except this is made specifically for the Reborn cut. A collection of conversations on craft featuring Del Toro, film stars Jake Willoughby, Mia Goth, and Oscar Isaac, cinematographer Dan Lawson, production designer Tamara Deville, costume designer Kate Hawley, and creature designer Mike Hill, called The Parlor. Which, I mean, the production designers on the film, apparently one of them is apparently from Vancouver, actually, which is, and also was actually did a little talk at the Vancouver National Film Festival last year around the time the film was released. There's also a Q&A moderated by Martin Scorsese and musician Patti Smith, an interview with the person that did the score of the film, Alexandra Splott, credited by film music scholar John Burlingame, who apparently also is also does the scores on his recent films, but also does scores for films with Wes Anderson, films preview, English studies for the deaf and hard of hearing, and English derivative audio, plus an essay by scholar and author Christopher Frayling, new cover by Denver Belbilbico. So yeah, I mean, I'm for sure probably going to get this edition because it has an extended version of the film, also has the director's cut, and if it is part of the sale, I'll probably could get it with the Criterion Collection edition of Nightmare Alley, which of course that one also has a director's cut, which is also presented in black and white, but does have a lot of new special features specifically for this release, which is unusual for a release of a Criterion edition of a film made by Guillermo Del Toro. And then we'll actually go to the next film that they're probably going to be releasing the month, and this one also is probably not a surprise, although kind of more recent, because this film they actually put was actually available on the Criterion channel, and apparently they're kind of putting it on Blu-ray. And that film is a horror film called Welcome to the Terrordome, filmed by Ngozi Onwurah. So let's find out what this film talks about. Ngozi Onwurah is radically ahead of its time dystopian sci-fi film Welcome to the Terrordome, the first theatrically distributed British feature by a black woman, ferociously reveals a near future in which black people are segregated within a slum called the Terrordome, where simmering violence and anger threaten to boil over in the wake of a young boy's murder. Okay, this film is probably kind of very historic in the case of British cinema, where it's directed by a black woman. Namely, after an incendiary single by Public Enemy, the film uses its rap soundtrack to both comment on and drive its narrative part of a sensibility in which American, British, and African cultures collide in the past, present, and future collapse. I mean, that's kind of sound like the type of film that also Ryan Coogler would probably make. In this present work, Omar builds a visionary astrophysical cosmology that connects the history of slavery to modern-day systemic brutality. So, let's remember the special features of the Criterion of this film, which this is only being released on Blu-ray. There's no 4K. This film is from 1995. Okay. It's called maybe Low Budget 2. And see, you can also see it on the Criterion channel right now. It has a new director. Sorry. It has a new 2K digital restoration supervised and approved by the cinematographer of the film, Alwyn H. Kuchler, with 2.0 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack, a new audio commentary featuring Kuchler, the person that made the film Ngozi Onowa, and Criterion curatorial director Ashley Clark. Actually, an episode of Meet the Filmmakers on Ngozi Onowa, which is probably maybe kind of like the hint why this was probably going to be getting a Criterion edition. A few short films by Anora, including Coffee Colored Children from 1988 and Still I Rise from 1993, as well as Hang Time 2001 with an introduction by the director, English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, plus an essay by poet and critic Kaddish Morris, new cover by Agabo Desiree Cesar. Kind of says it does have new special features, but not as a lot of special features are kind of in depth. I mean, there's the audio commentary, and a few short films that kind of go through the director's career, and other than that, probably not a lot of special features, but I mean, if you kind of like this type of film, you could probably go get it. And then we also have a film and then we also apparently have a film that I kind of found out recently that is kind of a horror film in a sense. That film is Yuli Edel's Christiane F, which it was shown during Blake Cinema Festival, which is probably like a film festival that is happening around like the continent, where they show very dark films, and apparently usually the art house cinemas in the continent would determine which films they show. Which apparently the Park Theater here in Vancouver apparently was part of the festival this year, and apparently Sean Baker, which you probably know, made the Academy-winning film Anora, and also big fan of Criterion Collection too. That even also kind of signed my copy of the Criterion edition of Anora, and apparently he selected that film for the festival, which and so it's probably kind of like on par with kind of the types of films he kind of make, and apparently David Bowie's apparently in this film too, and okay, this one might involve drugs, but let's find out what's in this. Plunging into the 1970s Berlin underground, this unforgettable portrait scene is one of the most harrowing films ever made about drug addiction. Based on the true story of Christine Fetchernov, whose shocking memoir made her the face of a generation of troubled German youth, this brazen dramatization follows the alienated 13-year-old Christine as she goes from popping pills to shooting heroin amid West Berlin's infamous club scene. The highs of adolescence abandoned, giving way to an agonizing existence on the city's desolate margins. Instant cult sensation on account of its off-the-kennelly gleaming location, shooting, and electrifying soundtrack by David Bowie, Christiane F remains a haunting vision of a young life in free fall. I mean, maybe kind of be similar to that other film, which, Maria Full of Grace, which, kind of involves a similar theme in a sense. Well, let's find out what the special features of the Criterion edition of Christiane F. So it has a new 4K digital restoration approved by the person who made the film, Yuli Edo, with 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack. The film not presented with HDR, a new interview with Adele, a new appreciation by Sean Baker, which, that kind of makes sense since he shows that film for the Bleak Film Festival. Interview with film star Natasha Brookhorst in 2022, screen test, new English translation, plus an essay by scholar Hester Baer. So, I mean, if you're kind of a big fan of the films of Sean Baker and you kind of want to see more of the films that kind of inspired his work, you could probably get this release. I mean, I could probably see this film probably at some point. And then we gotta have this other film apparently being released in the month with The Shout, which I think it's a British film, but it does also look like a horror film, so let's find out what's in this film. In The Shout, a tour de force of psychic dread that begins as an ambient murmur. A tour de force of psychic dread that begins as an ambient murmur and builds to an existential Shrek, the Polish director Jerry Skolimowski's provocative adaptation of a short story by Robert Graves, the hallucinatory confrontation with the unknown. In a small English village, an experimental composer and his wife see their routine existence upended by the arrival of an enigmatic stranger, played by seducingly sinister Alan Bates, who claims to possess a knowledge of Aboriginal magic and the ability to kill using a deadly scream, a power that makes him an object of both terror and desire. Oh, so Scream kills people in this case in this film, and does involve indigenous people as well too. With its bustle box structure, unnerving ambiguity, and otherworldly electronic sound design, this Cannes Film Festival Award winner quivers with the primal fear of mysterious and uncontrollable forces. So let's find out what are the special features of this release. Those are not a lot of special features too, but they might be new in a sense. Because a 2K digital restoration approved by the person who made the film, Jerzy Skolomowski, and director of photography Mike Molloy, with 2.0 surround DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack, and new interviews with Skolomowski and producers Jeremy Thomas. I mean, Jeremy Thomas is probably a famous producer in Britain. Excerpts from Skolomowski's appearances at the 1997 Midnight Sun Festival, a TV special on the making of the film from 1977 called On the Set of The Shout, English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, plus an essay by scholar Leo Goldsmith, new cover by Rafa Orico Diaz. So it does have some new interviews with some of the people involved, but I mean, but at least it kind of goes in depth into the making of the film, and also this one's also available on the Criterion channel, so you can probably see it as well too. And then we actually have a 4K re-release of probably one of the greatest films of all time, but you can also say also one of the greatest horror films of all time, maybe also one of the greatest thrillers of all time. Of course, that is the Academy Award-winning The Silence of the Lambs, starring Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, directed by Jonathan Demme. Which I still didn't see this film yet, but I probably will eventually have to see it at some point. And since now this has a 4K re-release, I probably get this 4K re-release, or still borrow it at the library because I think the original Blu-ray release might have had a 4K master. Well, apparently for the although the film was previously released by the Criterion Collection on DVD, it's one of the first films that were kind of released, but by them on DVD, and but it does have its kind of famous moments, and it probably kind of made Hannibal Lecter probably something part of pop culture in a sense. So since this is a re-release, of course, there are probably no new special features, though apparently also Kino Lorber previously released this in 4K. I mean, some of the other films that apparently the Criterion Collection released back then on Blu-ray apparently got re-released in 4K by Kino Lorber, and then apparently got been released by Criterion Collection again after that. So let's apparently the special features on the Criterion edition of The Silence of the Lambs, I mean, we're probably mainly not new, but they're apparently also from the previous DVD release, which, however, for the 4K digital restoration of the film, it was supervised by director of photography Tak Fujimoto with 2.0 surround DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack, with also an alternative 5.1 surround DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack. The film presented in HDR. There's an old recovery from the previous DVD release. The interview with critic Madeline McDowell might have been on the previous Blu-ray release. There were some deleted scenes. Interview from 2005 with the person who made the film, Jonathan Demme, and film star Jodie Foster. 4 documentaries featuring hours of interviews with the cast and crew of the film. Another making of the film. Storyboards, film's preview, English subtitles for hard of hearing, plus an introduction by Foster. 2 essays, one by critic Amy Tubin, and one by critics Willow Kevin McClay and Caden Martin Gardner. Piece from 2013 by author Thomas on the origins of the character Hannibal Lecter. And I now want to interview with Demme, covered by Sean Freeman and Eve Sibin of There Is. Now, this was also number 13, apparently, in the collection. So, I mean, I'll probably see this film eventually at some point. And finally, we're going to go through the Stanley Kubrick box set with the Complete Kubrick, which, of course, many of the films of Stanley Kubrick are apparently available in multiple releases. Some of them are in the Criterion Collection, and some also by the production companies that made those films. But while apparently that somehow all the films that he made were not put in a collection together until now, which I mean, of course, probably Stanley Kubrick is probably one of the greatest film directors of all time. I mean, that's a film director that's probably closest to him today might probably be Christopher Nolan, because of how he films his films, and apparently technology involved, which apparently, of course, Stanley Kubrick apparently used some technology during the making of his films, for instance, with Barry Lyndon, where apparently he had to use lenses developed by NASA to kind of create the look of the film, and then also for The Shining, where apparently that's where he invented the Steadicam, and if that wasn't invented, we wouldn't have all the steady shots we'd probably see in many things apparently today. This is apparently kind of similar to the Wes Anderson box set from last year, where well, of course, with the Wes Anderson box set, they put the films apparently in like in a box that's kind of like in the style of something we'd seen from Wes Anderson. Before the Stanley Kubrick box set, they apparently like kind of put it in a kind of, you could say, in a little package, but they're also kind of presenting it as if we're kind of going through Stanley Kubrick's personal vault. And now we thought somehow that some of the new films apparently in this box set will probably get individual releases. One of them apparently, of course, Lolita, which is was probably a film that was expected to be released for the Criterion Collection, but it is finally being released, though right now it's only available in this box set, but they might put the standalone editions of that film and maybe other films, possibly. Maybe in next month or in the next few months, possibly. I mean, then we might have like a Criterion edition of The Shining and the Criterion Collection edition of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which kind of, and then also maybe a Criterion Collection edition of Full Metal Jacket. And yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, I saw some of his films. I mean, like they're all great. I mean, of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which for sure also like one of the greatest films of all time, and apparently even Steven Spielberg talked about that in a podcast recently. And that is a film that will for sure get you talking, and probably also inspired Christopher Nolan, and that he even got involved with the re-release of the film. Apparently, I think around 2018, it was also presented in 70mm. That also might also inspire Interstellar, which was, of course, could probably say could also be Christopher Nolan's best film, although of course with Oppenheimer, which apparently he got Best Picture at the Academy Awards for that film, I mean that could also be his best film, but I mean, and now apparently he has his next film, The Odyssey, which of course we know is filmed entirely in IMAX, and I'm apparently like, based on early reviews of it so far, kind of people are saying that it could actually get Best Picture at the Academy Awards next year, and it could open the floodgates to apparently more films being filmed entirely in IMAX, which back then was impossible. A feature-length film in IMAX, but now it's, with The Odyssey, apparently now it's possible now. And the film's also mind-blowing in a sense, where something like that one scene where apparently when the flight attendant apparently like gives the food to the to the pilots, and then when she gets to the cockpit, apparently like she's kind of like walking in a circle like in free gravity, and like. And also, like, the scene near the end of the film is also kind of blowing when the main person in the film kind of goes through the dimensions, and yeah, that's sure that's an experience you have that's gonna blow your mind for sure. And then we also have Doctor Strangelove, which is a film that is still relevant today because of course it does tackle on like on nuclear weapons and various people that are involved in government, and that even kind of wrote an essay about the film and its kind of relation with history, apparently, and for like a history class, apparently, when I went to college, and there's also some great performances in the film, including performances from Peter Sellers, who plays apparently 3 people in the film, and you also have George C. Scott playing a general who apparently kind of showed that he's probably not doing his job, and then and apparently this was also that might have been James Earl Jones's first film as well too, where he plays like a pilot apparently on the plane where apparently they were like gonna drop a bomb somewhere in Russia, where at the time his name was called the Soviet Union. Yeah, and the Criterion edition of the film, apparently they even replicated the little manual that's like the pilots in the plane apparently had to like look through when a certain like plan has to be accomplished. So let's find out what this box set talks about. A titan of cinema whose influence extends across visual art, philosophy, politics, technology, fashion, and beyond, Stanley Kubrick created an unprecedented string of masterpieces. From Paths of Glory to Doctor Strangelove to 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, and Eyes Wide Shut, bending disparate genres to his will, he imbued his creations with a cunningly ironic worldview and an iconic, mesmerizing, precise visual style, probing the anxieties, enigmas, and horrors of the 20th century with a coolly devastating eye, tracing evolution from evident maverick to Hollywood rebel to visionary transitional auteur, whose every film from the mid-1960s all became a manifesto of a radically new sensibility. The Complete Kubrick brings together the entirety of a body of work that opened pop cinema up to new realms of moral profoundity and metaphysically mystery. I mean, of course, we probably know that Stanley Kubrick passed away when he made Eyes Wide Shut, which of course recently got a Criterion edition, and if he was still alive today, he would have made AI. That film was now 25 years old, and I mean, it would have been different if he'd directed of Steven Spielberg, which, although there is one of Hirokazu Koreeda's apparently recent films with with sheep in the box, which might be ripping off that film, but I mean, to find out that when I see the film. Here for the first time are Kubrick's 13 features and 3 shorts, all restored in 4K with original soundtracks alongside the 5.1 mixes, restored and remastered. Over 25 hours of interviews, documentaries, and behind-the-scenes materials, and deluxe packaging, illustrated with rare photographs, artwork, and documents annotated by Kubrick himself, all housed in a singular box as part of the director's legendary archive. The question is, apparently, are some of these special features going to be new, which, at least for Lolita, there'll probably be some new special on that. I mean, if they do make new special features for all the films, then apparently eventually they'll probably release standalone editions of those films. And of course, with the Wes Anderson box set, I mean, though this may not be the case with this box set because maybe they're not going to release all the films in the box set standalone, which if you have kind of like most of those films already, then you probably don't need to get this box set. Some of these films might have new 4K remasters, even though some of them do already have 4K remasters, but we'll have to go through the information about the box set. Yeah, this is what the box set looks like, which so it's kind of like if you're going through Stanley Kubrick's archive. Yeah, this has a lot of discs, and they put them in kind of like in the form of like a kind of folder, and there's also a book that kind of like, so it has all the films in the that he made, which, of course, The Killing, Killer's Kiss, they were when it was first released with the Criterion Collection, they were both included in one disc, but for this box that I put separately, well, Paths of Glory, that's another film that was also in the collection for a while. Oh, Spartacus, apparently this was previously released by the Criterion Collection on DVD, but now it's coming back to the collection for the first time in 4K. There's Lolita, which that's a controversial film, The Synth, and Doctor Strangelove, Choose One: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, which another film I have yet to see, and then Barry Lyndon, Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and Eyes Wide Shut. And then they put the short films apparently throughout one of the films. So here are some of the special features of the box set, which in total there are 30 discs, with all the films being restored in 4K, with the original soundtracks, alongside the 5.1 mixes restored and remastered. For The Shining, there is an international version of the film included, which, with this release, a new 4K restoration of the making of the film by Vivian Kubrick called Making the Shining, new audio commentaries, review on some of the films, with filmmaker Lee Unkrich, editor of the book Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and author Mark Bonson's Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, R.C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece. A new conversation between novelist Jonathan Levin and film historian Kevin Winter on Kubrick authorship, unseen screen test for Lolita with James Mason, Sulain, and Rear, Full Metal Jacket behind-the-scenes footage, at least for Full Metal Jacket, archive interviews with various people involved with the films, including Alexander Singer, Christiane Kubrick, Kirk Douglas, Gene Simmons, Peter Joseph, George C. Scott, Peter Sellers, Sue Lyons, Scatman Carruthers, Calvin Pike, John Alcott, Wendy Carlos, Douglas Turnbull, and Steven Spielberg. A few documentaries about Stanley Kubrick, which some of them are actually in some of the Criterion releases of the films by the director they released already, including some from the recent Criterion edition of Eyes Wide Shut, including Stanley Kubrick Life in Pictures from 2001, directed by Jan Harlan, narrated by Tom Cruise. Oh yeah, that's that documentary that I kind of saw on a cruise ship. Kubrick talked about his work in his own words in 2020 called Kubrick by Kubrick, a revised version of a document from 2013 called Staircase to Nowhere about the making of The Shining, and boxes from 2008 about the trove of archival materials behind by Kubrick. The deluxe packaging illustrated with rare photographs, artwork, and documents edited by Kubrick himself, all housed in a single box as part of the director's legendary archive, an essay by author and critic Daniel Rich, and much more. Packaging designed by Drusilla Ardeline of Sister High Design. Possibly get this box in the future, but I mean, at some point. But I mean, unless if they release some of the films in the box that's standalone, then I could probably just get the standalone editions of those films. But if you're kind of a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's work, I mean, you could probably get this box set. And that is all the film that the Criterion Collection will be releasing in October, and it does look like Halloween for them in October. Of course, we got like the Criterion edition of Guillermo Del Toro's Frankenstein, which includes a new director's cut of the film, plus a film that Sean Baker likes with Christiane F, an important film in black cinema, case of British cinema with II The Terrordome, more British horror with The Shout, like a 4K release of The Silence of the Lambs, released for the Criterion Collection edition of the film, and you also got the Stanley Kubrick box set with the Kubrick, and the early films of Samuel Fuller. What are your thoughts on the films that the Criterion Collection will be releasing in October, and also what are your thoughts on the Stanley Kubrick box set, and will you probably be getting it? Even though you might have some of the films in the box set already, well, you can put your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoy me going through what films the Criterion Collection will be releasing in October this year, you can probably like the video, subscribe to my channel, I'll talk more about the Criterion Collection, other things we're doing film, and then I'll see you later. Bye, everyone.